Hello, my name is Mark Blest. I'm an associate brand manager with Lebanon Turf. I oversee the Lead Pro brand. I've been in the turfgrass industry since 1989. Worked as a golf course superintendent, as well as for sports turf and residential lawns. I've been with Lebanon Turf since 2022. Today we will discuss pre-emergent herbicides for turfgrass management. These products are primarily designed to control grassy weeds like crabgrass and goosegrass, but some also control a limited number of broadleaf weeds. This picture on the screen is crabgrass, and this is the main target pest that these pre-emergents control. I did mention there are also some broadleaf weeds that are controlled, but the main purpose of pre-emergent herbicides would be to control grassy weeds. Also, some of the items I mentioned can be used to treat ornamental beds, but this webinar is turfgrass specific. Also, this is not an exhaustive list of chemicals used for pre-emergent weed control. I'll be discussing most popular, readily available options on the market. All these items must be applied pre-emergently. So what that means is these need to be applied before the grass seeds have germinated. There are a few options out there if some crabgrass has germinated, and we'll discuss those a little bit later on. This background shows you the perfect lawn that we'd all love to have. And in order to get that, on the screen has some of the chemicals that are out there. It's dithiopyr or dimension on the market, prodiamine, also is called barricade or stonewall, pendimethalin, we looked at, it's called pendy or pendulum, Benefin plus trifluralin, it's called Team. Benefin by itself is Balan. Oxydiazone is called Ronstar, and mesotrione, Tenacity, and flumioxazin, Stayguard. Once again, these are the most popular products on the market, but there are other options out there. Before we go any further, I want to mention the pesticide label. The label is a law. My presentation today will include numerous general comments related to pre-emergent herbicides. The label serves as the final authority on the product's use. Let's quickly look at some of the information on the label. So some of the important information, of course, it contains the name of the product, a brief description of what it does, fertilizer analysis, the active ingredient EPA numbers. Also includes the precautionary statements for hazards to humans and domestic animals. It describes the appropriate protective equipment you need to use when applying it, some directions for use. Also talks about grass species, whether it's cool season grass or warm season grass, and then the specific types of grass assigned within those categories. Also, we're going to look at part of the label. It talks about what weeds are controlled, application, timing, and rate. Once again, this is just one example, but the key takeaway is the label is the law. If you don't see the grass that you have listed as a tolerant species, or there's something else on there that doesn't match up with what you want to do on the label, you cannot use the product. Now that we've briefly talked about the label, let's look at some specific factors to consider when using pre-emergents. As mentioned already, a turfgrass type. You need to know whether you have a cool season grass or a warm season grass. Also, some compounds may hurt fine fescues, but might be fine on ryegrass or bluegrass, so it's important to know what type of turf you have. Also, seeding. It's important to know if you're going to be seeding or you have just seeded, because pre-emergents have a long residual activity and they impact new seeding, as well as they could impact the potential for reseeding in the fall. Also, when it comes to these products, they need to be watered in. These herbicides need to get in a soil profile, and that is something that only is accomplished through watering or rainfall. And also timing. General rule of thumb is these need to be applied 10 to 14 days prior to the earliest expected germination period in the spring. Let's look a little farther into some of these areas here. So seeding, as I mentioned earlier, these products won't only impact crabgrass and other weeds, they also impact the seeding of your beneficial grass that you're seeding. So there's two ways to look at this. If you're seeding something in the spring, you would have to wait 4 to 6 weeks or at least 2 or 3 times to have the lawn mowed before you could actually put one of these down or you could impact your seeding. Also, you need to look at the possibility of reseeding in the fall. If you plan to renovate your lawn in the fall, it's important to read the label and determine how soon you can reseed. You can then work backwards from the seeding date to determine when you need to put that pre-emergent down. If you do need to seed in the spring, there is an option. There's a product called mesotrione. It is a product that has the benefit of not damaging beneficial grass. So if you want your seed in the spring, you can go with a product that has mesotrione because it will prevent the crabgrass germination, but it will not impact the new seeding. The key, though, is mesotrione does not have season-long control. So if you use something like this, you would need to come back several weeks later with a standard crabgrass control to give you season-long control. Also, as I mentioned, these products need to be watered in. They work by creating a barrier in the soil, and the only way this chemical is released is through water or irrigation. The watering or irrigation should be done within 2 to 3 days of the application for the best results. Also, timing. The general rule of thumb is apply pre-emergent materials approximately 10 to 14 days prior to the earliest expected germination in the spring. Crabgrass typically germinates when the soil temperature in the upper inch reaches 55 to 58 degrees for 4 to 5 days. The chart shows you in Pennsylvania when typically these things happen between March 15th to April 15th, northern tier and higher altitude counties, April 20th to May 10th, and other areas of Pennsylvania, April 1st to May 1st. The picture on the left includes a forsythia plant. This is a plant that often is used. It's a great reminder to say, hey, if I see that thing blooming, I need to start getting my pre-emergent crabgrass control down. Also, in some areas, crabgrass populations, if they're very high, it's important to do 2 spring applications. So depending on the past history, if you're not sure, doing a split application could give you really extended control. It's important one's going to look at the label to help you determine the length of control that you would get by doing 2 applications. Also, in the springtime, if you're out a little bit later than you'd like to, there's a product called Dimension. Dimension will provide a little bit of post control. And what that means is it'll control very small crabgrass seedlings. These are smaller than you'd be able to really see. So if you already see crabgrass, you're too late for those. But this would be something, if you know you're a week or 2 later, a product like Dimension would be really beneficial in this type of setting. The other thing you can do in the springtime, as mentioned earlier, is this product called mesotrione. It also has some post-emergent activity, and once again, it will not harm anything that might be newly seeded. The trick with mesotrione, once again, is it does not provide the same season-long control as typical crabgrass products, so you would need to do a second application with another product later on. I also want to talk about goosegrass. Most of the products control crabgrass and goosegrass, but goosegrass is becoming more and more of a problem in Pennsylvania and throughout the U.S. So it's important to look at control strategies for crabgrass. The standard product used to be oxidizon, or called Ronstar. This product is no longer available for use on home lawns. It can only be used on sports turf and some golf course settings. So if you know that goosegrass is a problem for you, one chemical you can use, it's newer chemistry, it's flumioxazin, or Stay-Guard is the name out on the market. The great thing about Stay-Guard, it preventively controls poania. Also, it controls some broadleaf weeds like dandelions as well. So it's really an exciting new chemistry that has lots of options on the pre-emergent market for crabgrass and goosegrass control. I do thank you for taking your time today to watch this presentation. I trust you found it helpful. Please check out LebanonTurf.com if you have any more questions, or feel free to give us a call. Thank you.